Congratulations, you've just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, amazing, capable bodies they'd love for the rest of their lives. All right, folks, I got a question for you here. Have you ever found yourself in this position where you tell yourself, I'm only going to have one drink tonight? And then one becomes two becomes three, and then the next morning you're thinking, why did I do that again? Now, here's the interesting thing. Most people would assume that the problem is willpower. They think they just need to be stronger, more disciplined, maybe do a dry January, or promise themselves that they're going to cut back starting next week. But what if the problem isn't willpower at all? What if the real issue isn't the alcohol, but the way our brain and nervous system respond to stress, emotion, and habit? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in today's conversation. My guest today is Colleen Freeland. She is an intuitive drinking coach, and she's the host of the globally top-ranked podcast, It's Not About the Alcohol. Colleen helps high-achieving professionals reduce their drinking, often by as much as 80%, without relying on shame or rigid rules or white-knuckling their way through the rest of their lives. Instead, she focuses on something that she calls emotional sobriety, learning how to regulate your nervous system, change your thinking patterns, and actually become the kind of person who naturally wants to drink less. Now, what makes Colleen's work so fascinating is that it comes from a very personal experience. As you're going to hear, she spent 20 years struggling with alcohol herself, drinking every day while raising kids, running a business, and living what looked like a very successful life on the outside. Eventually, she realized something very powerful. The solution to overdrinking wasn't simply to, quote unquote, get sober. It was to get happier. And once she understood how the brain, emotions, and nervous system all work together, everything changed. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about why willpower alone almost always fails, the surprising psychology behind why we drink more than we intend, why habits like dry January don't often lead to lasting change, how stress and nervous system dysregulation drive the urge to drink, and how shifting your mindset can make drinking less feel easy and natural. Now, whether you're someone who wants to quit drinking completely, or maybe you're simply curious about that nightly glass of wine or cocktail habit, I think you're going to find this conversation really eye-opening. So, without further ado, whip up your protein smoothies and let's meet Colleen.
I earned a PhD in alcohol use disorder. I drank my way here, Kevin.
Is that right? Okay.
Well, yeah, I learned it from experience and walking through, my own. I don't want to say I was in personal hell, but I drank every single day for 15 years and raised kids and ran marathons and ran a business and all the things. And then just kind of got exhausted. For me, my come to my knees moment was in COVID. So like so many women, I was going to drink through it. Liquor stores are essential services. I'm a good citizen over here. And 6 weeks in, I was like, I can't keep doing this anymore. And at the time, I didn't know, well, honestly, there was no option like the one I've created. So I did what we fight against doing for years. I raised my hand and said, I'm an alcoholic and I'll go to AA. Like, I will say anything if you will just make this stop. And so I go into the AA mindset and philosophy, lots of nice people there. But I realized very early on that the language was a problem, not the community and the support, but just this idea that I'm an alcoholic. I had never identified as an alcoholic. And now I'm relanguaging my entire life from my first sip of alcohol and storying this narrative of being an addict. And, just reinforcing that. And then this idea that I can never drink again. I mean, I was willing to promise that, like, make it stop. But this idea that I was powerless over alcohol, now I see that can be really helpful language if you are a high powered male who's never been, maybe you just need to be taken down a few notches. But one of the reasons I was drinking was because I felt so powerless. I was having 3 jobs and there wasn't equal domestic help. I had 7 kids at the time because 3 were stepchildren. So it was like, there's no curiosity here about why I'm drinking so much every day. I'm drinking to cope with a life that is built for me to not have any priority at all. And so it just evolved over time. I don't know how far you want me to go into it.
Yeah, well, let's back up a little bit because I want to pull a couple things out of that story. First is you've mentioned a couple times I would do anything to make this stop. What was the this? What was alcohol? How was that manifesting in your life negatively?
It had gotten to the point where the moment I was alone, I didn't drive drunk, but the moment I could, when I was done driving for the day and was able to pour wine, I would blow through a whole bottle in an hour. And
Mm.
then during COVID, I kept going. So for me, for many years, I was very functional, but COVID removed all of the reasons I had to not drink.
Gotcha.
My something had flipped in my brain of I need a reason to drink. It's a date night, it's a Friday night, it's a social event, to I need a reason to not drink. And then with the stress of COVID, financial, 7 teenagers in my house needing Wi-Fi
Wow.
passwords, meh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I couldn't exist anymore. My window of productivity shrank so much with the lockdowns because I was starting happy hour earlier and earlier. I was losing productivity time because I was more and more hungover. I mean, at one point I was drinking almost a bottle of vodka a day, which wasn't my
Mhm.
norm. I was in a free fall, if you will. And I had to do something to interrupt it.
Had to do something to interrupt it. Now, you mentioned AA, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that. But had you tried other things before? For example, I think years ago it was Sober October. Now it seems to be more trendy for like a dry January. Had you done things like this in the past? Had you before, say,
I
just going to AA?
I had never tried to do a sober October. I was jealous of my friends, but it was so ingrained in my identity that I knew better than to even try. This is the psychology of alcohol use disorder. It's not how much or how often you drink, it's how many times you've perceived that you failed at following through. So by the time
Mm.
October even became a thing, I knew I'm not going to sign up for something I'm not going to do. I didn't see that I would have the capacity to follow through. There were a couple times I tried to do a 10-day challenge. I once did the lemonade and cayenne pepper and all that, and I just poured vodka in it and drank through it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
I was beyond thinking that I was going to be able to stay sober.
Gotcha. Now, you use that word alcohol use disorder. Is that an official term? Does that have a
It is
definition?
It is actually the official term. Alcoholism is more of a colloquialism at this point. There's no insurance form that, people say it all
Mm.
the time, but the
Yeah.
DSM-5 classifies alcohol use disorder, which is a much more updated version of classifying as somebody as an alcoholic. We
Right.
all know people that have gotten into the weeds because they lost their job, their wife left them, whatever, and they pull out. But they were drinking like an alcoholic for a period of time. Once you label yourself as an alcoholic, then it's not a disorder, it's an identity. And that's why if you identify as somebody who is an alcoholic, they'll talk about, you're one drink away from living in a van down by the river because you're
Yeah.
programmed to believe that you're going to lose control when you drink. So even if you get served inadvertently, I remember being in an all-inclusive, ordering my cranberry and club soda and realizing halfway through the drink that there's vodka in this. And then my brain just like, oh, like something horrible is going to happen to me. So there's good and bad with the AA mindset, but it definitely becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Research shows that the number one cause of over drinking in the future is the belief that you can't control yourself. Not, I mean, genetics plays a factor, environment, childhood ACE scores, all of the things can make you more vulnerable. But the number one predictor of over drinking in the future is the belief that in loss of control. And it's a myth. It's not real because the brain is always changing. This idea that one drink after 10 years of being sober is going to send you back, it's not even possible. AA was created before we understood what neuroplasticity is.
Yeah, as you were describing that, I was thinking to myself, that sounds like neuroplasticity, right? Neurons that
Yeah.
fire together, wire together, all that fun stuff. All right, so alcohol use disorder and alcoholism, because I think that most of the people listening to this, I think it's safe to say, do not consider themselves alcoholics, right? Because that
Right.
word has this connotation of, like you said, well, my spouse left me and I lost my job and it's just being the dog and the van down by the river, that sort of a thing. But alcohol use disorder, if I'm somebody who comes home and every day I decompress with a glass of wine or a cocktail, but I do that daily and it is to use your word, a coping mechanism, do I have alcohol use disorder?
Technically, it depends because it's not about how much or how often you drink.
Okay.
Do you drink more than you think you should drink?
Hmm.
So it's separate from the alcohol has addictive properties. And so if you don't have enough time between your drinking sessions, then cortisol goes up, dopamine goes down, you're more likely to drink again. But alcohol use disorder is a psychological, it's in the DSM-5. So it's a mental health issue where I'm drinking more than I think I should drink. And for whatever reason, I can't correct that. That is what alcohol use disorder is, not some level of physical, like, like we think coffee. If you don't drink your coffee, you're going to notice that. And if you're a daily drinker and you don't have your drink, you're going to notice that. It's really how you respond and what you're making that mean about you that plants the seed that you're not in control and sends the snowball down the hill.
So then is it fair to say then that control then is the defining thing when I no longer feel like I have control? I'm fighting these internal battles. I'm not going to drink tonight. And then I go out and I have, well, maybe I'll just have one. And then I have a
Yeah.
second. Of course, once I have two drinks in me, then the old me that decided I wasn't going to have any drinks tonight. And then tomorrow I'm in this shame spiral. And I feel like, and I've lost that control. Is that more kind of what you're
That
talking
is
about?
exactly what it is. And for your listeners, alcohol, if you look at your own life, alcohol didn't become a problem until you wondered if it was a problem, until somebody told you you're
Gotcha.
out of control, or maybe you grew up with alcoholics or whatever. It's not like I drank like an asshole in college. Never once did I think I had a problem, unless I was under 21 and I couldn't get it. That was a problem. But it wasn't disordered thinking around it. It's a thinking
Right.
problem, not a drinking problem.
Gotcha. Okay. I love the way this conversation's going. Before we move on, I want to ask you a question. It might seem kind of basic here, or maybe even a dumb question, but why should I care about drinking less? Why should somebody listening to this, who maybe is that person comes home and pours a glass of wine or has a beer or whatever daily, what are the main reasons for thinking about or considering drinking less in their life?
Well, you are not going to hear me talk about cancer statistics or anything. The foundation of what I teach, which is no shame, is that there is no right or wrong way to drink. It is your experience of the drink, and is that serving your life? So it's not that I'm denying that, more than a certain number of drinks increases your risk, but so does drinking water out of a plastic bottle. So does, eating high
Soda, right?
fructose
Yeah.
corn syrup.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we are living, there's 100% mortality rate on this ride. And when you
Hmm.
look at, there are blue zones, like I don't know the town in Italy, but where they smoke and drink into their hundreds. They are socially connected, they are healthy. So it's not the substance that's causing the problem. Honestly, the mind body connection, if you think something is good for you, if you're the type of person like my grandmother was, who thought a drink a day is very healthy, then it's going to have different effects on you. It's like the placebo effect or the nocebo effect, that if you believe something is healthy, it's much more likely to have healthier effects on you because of the mind body connection. So it's a very subjective thing, and it's cultural, and there's no smoking gun in terms of what's going to kill you and what's not. So why should a person drink less? If they think they would be happier, more productive, in better physical condition, those would be the reasons. Your happiness is the primary focus there, unless of course you do have some medical condition where alcohol is exacerbating your risks or something like that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I want to dig into this because as a nutrition coach and a personal trainer and a fitness entrepreneur, I approached alcohol and the reasons to limit alcohol from purely that aspect, right? I know when I drink, let's face it, it's metabolic poison. There's not really a way around that. I'm not the resveratrol in a glass of red wine is not. It just
No.
isn't. So I approached
Right.
it from that way, and it really got me nowhere. I mean, I did a bunch of dry Januaries and things like that. It wasn't until actually I was challenged. You may know this woman, Carolina somebody or other, but she also talks about sober curiosity. I had a conversation with her, and as opposed to, I expected her to be, hey, you shouldn't drink for all these reasons. You know, it's bad for your health. It's the cancer statistics and all that. And she kind of did, but I laid out this story to her. I said, well, Carolina, here's the deal. I I feel like I need to have a drink when I'm in this situation. For example, my wife is a badass real estate agent. She's a top performer, and I'm constantly going to dinners and awards and things like that with her. And I'll be sat at a table with a bunch of people I don't know where the conversation is outside of my area of expertise or, frankly, interest, right? Everybody's talking about mortgages and real estate and the market and all of that. And I'm out of place there. But you know what makes me fit in perfectly? Couple of cocktails, couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yeah.
Kevin's got lots of, I've got plenty to say about the housing market in Wilmington, North Carolina. Whereas when I don't, I feel kind of shut out. And it was her challenge to that statement. She says, well, Kevin, why do you think that is? And I'm thinking, well, hey, I'm the interviewer here. Hang on, I didn't mean to get challenged. But I said, well, I don't know. I suppose I just feel kind of insecure in that situation. Maybe, a couple of drinks, social lubricant, all that. And she goes, okay, but why is that? What's wrong with you? And I go, well, there's nothing wrong with me. She said, well, no, wait, why do you feel like, why is Kevin with a couple of drinks gregarious and outgoing and having fun in this situation? Kevin without is kind of withdrawn and awkward feeling. And it was that sent me down because this conversation happened in a January. I was already doing a dry January. That turned into a couple of months. Anyway, long story short, that was a couple of years ago. I don't drink. Now, I'm married to a wife who is exactly in your target audience, as we talked about a little bit before we hit record here, who is, again, she's a high-powered lady boss, and her way of unwinding is that glass of Chardonnay every night. So there's a bunch of different reasons I think that people might want to limit alcohol. But for me, the breakthrough was not so much the health and the bad. It's not good for your health, Kevin, and you're trying to have optimal health and age in a healthy manner, et cetera, et cetera. It was more that psychological reason. And that is a long-winded way of me bridging to what I found fascinating when I started digging into you. And it's this core message of get happy, not sober. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what you mean there?
Yeah. So we'll start with basic science, and that is it has been shown that people who want to change their behavior because they believe it will make them happier are able to easily and permanently change their behavior. This speaks to how dopamine works in the brain. The problem with limiting alcohol or not drinking alcohol is that it is a negative goal. It's not that it's negative to drink less, it's the
Right.
absence of a behavior. And which means you're focusing on not doing it. Like imagine how you feel. You said you were going to only have one glass. As the liquid in your glass goes down, your anxiety is going up because your brain has no perception. It can't visualize not drinking. It doesn't know what comes next. And so, get happy, not sober is where if you focus on feeling what you want to feel, I want to feel more engaged. I want to feel connected. I want to feel confident. I want to feel grounded. If you set emotional goals for what you want, your brain will help you get what you want. Dopamine is tied to the story you're telling yourself. That's why somebody who thinks they hate running is never going to experience a runner's high. But somebody who thinks it is, then they do experience it. So dopamine is fired based on when you think you want something, and then after you experience it and you think, oh, I liked that. So that's the loop. See it, want it, do it, feel it. And so if you don't have a positive, concrete, specific goal of what you want, and your goals are languaged with negative language, like don't think about a glass of white wine with condensation and that
Yeah.
crisp. You can't have that. The brain's like, well, what can I have? So it's kind of learning how to think. It's a thinking problem. So some of this is a thinking solution. The other deeper foundational solution though, you can't do mindset work in a state of stress. So the very idea that I can't have a drink tonight dysregulates your nervous system because of aforesaid lack of vision. And you don't have access to your willpower because your nervous system is dysregulated and your body will override your brain when the pressure builds too much. So your conscious intention of I'm not going to drink tonight, if the pressure, the anxiety, the stress is too much, your body's going to hit the override button and say, you're not in charge of me anymore. I don't care what you want me to do or not do. Like I need relief. And so that's where alcohol becomes a tool. So get happy, not sober is learning how to set goals that your brain can actually help you get that unlock the energy and motivation you need to overcome the hard challenges that come with behavior change and building new neural pathways. If you want to get happy, not sober, then the drinking will just take care of itself because happy people don't drink themselves into a stupor.
Very, very well said. So I just want to go back just a minute and kind of pull apart because I think the reason a lot of, certainly in my personal case, I've seen this in people close to me, the reason a lot of, say, dry Januaries fail in the second week of January is because we rely solely on willpower. We've, like you said, I've put this restriction, this negative thing, and I'm relying on just grit and willpower. And maybe when I start, I'm motivated. So but those are finite resources. And if your plan for, say, not drinking or really any behavior you want to change is just grit and willpower, that's going to be a temporary, you're not going to get a long-term win. So I love the way you reframe that. But is that a fair way of looking at that I'm not going to get where I want to get on willpower alone?
If you are using willpower, you are going against what you think you really want. There are two sources of motivation, the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. The problem with avoidance of pain is, again, it's not directional. It's just anywhere but here, please. Pursuit of pleasure, you're clearly you want something. The problem with dry January is that for most people, they think the reward is February 1st when they collect their trophy, which means they're not connecting to the experience. Now, this is not all or nothing. They may be enjoying that they're sleeping better and, building some new neural pathways for how to, relax without alcohol, all good things. But if they're not thinking about it like that, you actually don't get the dopamine credits, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't notice that it feels good, your brain doesn't want to repeat the behavior. And the way dry January is set up is that the reward comes February 1st, which means you're denying yourself. You're actually reinforcing the idea that not drinking is hard. And that's why in my program, I don't have women quit drinking. I give them some basic guidelines, stay safe. You've already been managing your drinking. Just keep doing that and stop trying to change it. Because when you try to decrease and you experience not drinking or cutting yourself off at a certain time as hard, you are reinforcing the problem. It's getting stronger, your belief that this is hard. You're going against what you think you want. So you're not in energetic alignment.
Yeah. Okay. I love all of that. And certainly that resonates with me personally. I can tell you from experience when I would do a dry January, February 1st, I had my favorite gin in the house. I had an artisanal tonic water in the house. I made sure I had some fresh organic limes, and my reward for that hard work was probably several drinks, to be honest. So I could see how that's not a get happy, get sober sort of long-term solution, isn't it? I deprived myself of something that my brain says I want. And then at the end, after all that hard work, I get rewarded with
Yeah.
the thing that I was trying to cut back on. Yeah. Looking back on it now, it doesn't make as much sense as it did at the time. I was like, this makes perfect sense. I'll take a
When
month
the
off.
reward for not drinking is drinking,
Yeah.
that's disordered thinking right there. That doesn't make any sense.
It
The
doesn't. Yeah.
reward in and of itself is but you can't language it as not drinking. So that's why, like in my program, the closest we get to setting a goal, an alcohol related goal, is I want to feel what it's like to overcome the urge.
Mm.
Like, yeah, I want to feel that. But otherwise, I don't have my some taking a break from alcohol, to be fair, for daily drinkers is an important part of the reset. It can, give you a boost in terms of neurochemistry and things like that. But we don't do it until taking a break from alcohol sounds like the reward. And
Right.
so we do a
Right.
lot of work with nervous system regulation, learning that you want to go to bed. I want to feel tired. Stop avoiding feeling tired. It feels good to feel tired. Put your ass to bed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like we build a lot of things so that they're about 80%. Okay, this is good. And then maybe they need a little willpower, but really the willpower is setting themselves up for success so that the doing of other things feels easy.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. So we talk about get happy, not sober, and setting ourselves up for success. Do you have some tips, just some generic tips? I know this is what you do day in and day out in your programs, but when you say get happy, what are some practical things that we might try and put in place that would help us move the needle for those of us that are, let's just call it kind of more in that sober curious camp?
Yeah. So basically, what I want to do is take happy and we're going to put in the word regulated. There's two versions of you, the regulated version of you and the not regulated version of you. When you go to your event and you're out of your element and you're a little uncomfortable, your nervous system is experiencing some stress. Okay. So
Yep.
get happy, get not sober is a great slogan. But really, in my program, nervous system regulation is the foundation. You think different, you make different decisions. Morning you and evening you, two different people. Morning
Yep.
you has long-term goals and wants to be a rock star and do all the things. Evening you is literally out of gas. And the reason why you reach for the alcohol is if you're dysregulated all day, eyes open, feet hit the ground, and it is go time. In order for you to perform, you have had to shut off all notifications from your internal environment. You don't pee when you need to pee. You're not eating when you're hungry. You're not taking a break when you need it. It is go mode. That version of you, you pour alcohol on that, you're not drinking because you want to drink. You're drinking because your nervous system needs a break and you've not given her one all day. And so
Mm.
she's going to take matters into her own hands. So the foundation of my approach is based on training your brain to slow down when it wants to speed up. This is much more about what you do in the evening. I use systems thinking. How you drink in the evening is a data set. It tells you how you did throughout the day. So a lot of evenings, it doesn't even occur to me to drink. If it does, and I'm going into glass two, that's not the problem. I just use that as data and I think, okay, tomorrow I need to, put some space into my day. Drinking is not self-indulgent. Over drinking is a symptom of self-neglect. You've been not listening to your body to the point where she's like, I don't care what you think anymore, how much more I need to do. I'm never done and it's never good enough. At some point, it's talking yourself out of having a drink is like trying to convince yourself you don't have to go to the bathroom. That's not a thing.
Yeah. Okay. No, over drinking is more, what do you say, a symptom of self neglect as opposed to
Yeah.
something else. Yeah. Very interesting reframe there. All right. So then what I hear you saying then when we say, hey, get happy, it's more, how do I emotionally regulate myself throughout the days? Because you're right. I certainly, when I was a drinker, whether I had 4 drinks that evening or 1 drink that evening, was probably less. It wasn't probably, it was 100% tied to what happened earlier in that day. But you're right. Bright and early 6 a.m. Kevin is different than 6 p.m. Kevin coming home. Like you said, there's kids and responsibilities, but all day long I've fried my central nervous system. I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, and and a drink helps that immediately. All right. When I come home, because those days are inevitable, let's face it, some days are going to be crazier than others, just the culture we live in. Are there ways that, because let's just say for me, for example, my way of decompressing was a cocktail. It could be a glass of wine, could be something else. Are there behaviors I can learn that I can do other things that will give me that same sort of, hey, Kevin, it's time to get in our rest and digest state, and that's not alcohol?
First of all, the majority of the work truly is changing how you go through your day. And
Yep.
what but there are times when all the in the world, it was just raining shit and that was your day. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is also learning to think about it differently. Like I said, we set emotional goals. So you don't want a drink. You want what the drink is going to help you feel. And so creating distance with your language helps build back the neural pathways. I feel really stressed. I could work out, I could have a drink, I could do all these other things, but just thinking I need a drink, that's the habit. That's the neural pathway habit. So the way I teach, like for me personally, I enjoy drinking red wine and especially if I'm out to dinner or on the weekends, but I don't pour alcohol in a dysregulated nervous system because the version of me who's dysregulated in drinking is not the same version. So my priority is I'm going to relax so that I can have a drink if I want to. So to me, I have completely dissociated alcohol with stress relief. To me, that is a whole other problem. Like I need to go to the bathroom. And so the tools that I use, very simply, the primary tool that I would say is delay, don't deny, is what I teach. So you can tell your brain that wants to drink, not a problem. We're going to do that. I'm going to need 5 minutes or 1 hour to go do some of these other tools. And the key with that is to set a low bar method in that you don't
Hmm.
want to delay so long that you're white knuckling and training your brain that you're just waiting and that the reward comes with alcohol. So if you can only delay 5 minutes, okay, 2 minutes. Like just go outside and take a deep breath and say, that feels good. That's fine. One of my favorite tools, though, is the full body reset. I will go and lay on my bed and just sink and collapse. And the version of me that gets up is not the same version that laid down. Like when you just release and just let the tiredness behind your eyes, then I have a choice. Sometimes I don't want to get up because I'm not hungry or I don't want to drink. I'm tired. And so
Hmm.
I will lay down and just reconnect with my body. So delay, don't deny is a great method to pattern interrupt. And then thinking about what you really want is I really want to feel regulated right now, which to me, if I have plans on a Friday night, I really want to feel regulated because I know I'm not pouring out. I'm not going to enjoy my evening and I'm not pouring alcohol on this. So I'm going to do the tools, and nervous system regulation it's not big stuff. It's not hammer to the head, but it is practice because especially for high powered go goers, you go from 0 to 100 and you're like, well, I just go from 0 to 100. You're just not sensitive to the goings on in your internal body. You don't notice it till the water's boiling. Okay, so nervous system regulation is subtle. Finding the B in subtle. It's very nuanced. And as a hard driving drinker, you're going for the punch to the head. And nervous system regulation tools, they don't take you from 10 back down to 1. They take you from 10 to 9. And then you can use another tool at 8. Intelligence is the ability to make finer and finer distinctions. And so many of us are in such a habit of ignoring the signals from our body that it's a skill that you even notice. Like I can tell when I get a squirt of cortisol. I can tell when my dopamine triggers. Like I know what's happening in my body because I'm practiced at that, but I sure as heck didn't know that, 6 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me. And I say this all the time on this podcast, but really early on, we're like 450 something episodes here. But one of my very first guests was an elite masters athlete. He had won the CrossFit Games in his age division several times over. And one of the things he said to me that stuck with me, really stuck with me, he said, because I was asking him, it's like, how have you been able to compete? You're let's face it, you're an old guy and you're out there and you're the fittest man on earth in your age division. You've done it year after year. How were you able to maintain that peak performance? He said, well, Kevin, when my body whispers to me, I listen and I respond and I act accordingly. And my first thought was, most of us, probably myself included, we don't hear our body when it's screaming at us, which I think is what you're saying there,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it takes practice to learn to listen to your bodies. And I feel like in this culture, we have become so disconnected from these beautiful, sacred vessels, are these bodies of ours, that we don't listen. We don't hear our bodies when they're screaming at us, let alone when they're whispering suggestions to us. So go ahead. Do you have thoughts on that?
The biggest misconception, I don't know how it is for men. I'll speak as a woman, is that I'm not an emotional person. I am data driven, I am rational, and that's not true. If you're human, you are emotional. Emotions are the glue of your neural pathways. And if you're not managing your emotions because you think you're not emotional, then they are
Yeah.
managing you. And understanding that as a human, you only have two options. You can be emotionally regulated or emotionally dysregulated. And if you don't understand the language of emotions and how they're impacting you, every decision you make is emotional. And you may be very, very good at, your pre-programmed stuff is smart and intelligent, but if you don't understand that there are feelings happening, very subtle feelings. I used to say that I wasn't an emotional drinker. I didn't drink because I was sad. I'm not drinking because I'm depressed or angry. But delay my drink by 5 minutes, you're about to see somebody that's sad and angry. So,
Yeah.
like, this idea that I wasn't emotional was just me
Hmm.
bullshitting myself. And it's honestly, it's a lack of education. We don't teach this stuff in kindergarten. We teach people to perform and get the trophy and get the good grades and don't stop till you're dead and ignore all your we teach people to shut down emotionally, but that doesn't mean those emotions aren't there. There's no greater skill in life that you could give if you want to go to the next level than to get into touch with your emotions, because we've had to
Oh, yeah.
unplug our brains out of
Yeah.
our body. We just pull the plug and let our brains run us through life, and then we wonder why we're drunk and crazy in our 50s.
Yeah, yeah. How about that? So, is that what you mean then by, because I've seen in some of your literature this idea of emotional sobriety? Is that kind of what we're talking about there? Really getting in touch with that emotional side, understanding the power it has over behavior?
Yeah, it's emotional sobriety. I teach there's 6 core skills. One of them is nervous system regulation, which has to do with feelings. But the rest
Hmm.
of it is just really learning how to not be intoxicated by the bullshit you're telling yourself. Like, we all tell ourselves stories. So learning how to separate fact from fiction and learning how to see how it's your feelings about the facts, not the facts themselves. So it's really how to level up, showing up as a powerful leader. Like, it's not about being emotionally disconnected. It's about being emotionally regulated in real time so that your brain isn't, taking emotions mean you're making decisions based on the past. You're not seeing new information. And so there is nothing more powerful that you can do as a professional than to understand the skills of emotional sobriety. Yeah.
Emotional sobriety, skills of emotional sobriety. All right. Well, Colleen, as we're wrapping up here, I got a couple more questions for you. What does, in your view, what does healthy drinking look like? Is that a thing? Can I have a healthy relationship with alcohol? Say, for example, with my wife on date night, and we're connecting in this romantic atmosphere, and we're having a couple glasses of wine because we choose to, not because we need to. Is that what is that a healthy use of alcohol in your book, or what does that look like to you?
Well, just like I said before, there's no right or wrong way to drink. And I think that even me, as a person who would say I have a healthy relationship with alcohol, the problem is when you stop paying attention and go on autopilot with whatever rules. Our brains like to habituate things. Okay. And so maybe is it healthy to not drink during the week and have 1 glass of wine on a Friday night and 2 glasses of wine on a Saturday night? Maybe. What's not healthy is to not be paying attention to how alcohol affects you every time, because it's a drug and it has, it has different impacts on you based on your sleep. For women, hormones are a huge thing, especially in midlife. So while it may be perfectly fine for me to have 2 glasses of wine one Friday night, the next Friday night it may not be. And so to me, a healthy relationship, it's not about the alcohol. It's about having a healthy
Yeah.
relationship with yourself and with your body, where you're listening to your body in real time and reading your cues and taking care of yourself not going along to get along because this is what you always do. So this is what you're always going to do. It's not about the alcohol at all. You need to have a healthy relationship with your body, and then you don't need to worry about it.
That is beautifully, beautifully said. I absolutely love that. It's not about the alcohol. It's about the relationship you have with yourself. Well, all right, let's finish here then, because I'm kind of curious here. It seems to me as if alcohol use is decreasing. I don't think that seems, I think that's pretty well established fact. I think younger people are choosing not to drink, or to drink certainly a lot less. Where do you see this conversation around alcohol, and especially your area, this emotional sobriety, get happy, where do you see this conversation, say, in the next 3 to 5 years? Do you see this trend to drink less continuing? What does that look like?
Well, I think, you know, there are two ways to be: either staying on a path that isn't working for you, being in recovery from the path that isn't working for you. And I think that with our culture, to me, like if you ask me what my real mission is, it's the evolution of human consciousness. And we are all our focus has been stolen. We are so distracted. We are following these rules. There is no one source of truth. We are divided. We are isolated. And so to me, if alcohol doesn't bring you to your knees, something else will. If you are not getting in energetic alignment with your mind and your body, if you don't have the user manual to how this particular operating system works. And so whether it's decrease, it's like addictions of, you can be addicted to your phone and sugar or Netflix, you know? So to me, it's about realizing that we are not here to do and follow along to make sure everybody's profitable for fourth quarter earnings. This is about getting connected with ourselves again. And we are living in an environment where it's getting more and more difficult. And if you're not paying attention to what's happening in your body, then you will be more and more disconnected from yourself. And that growing sense of, I have it all and it all feels wrong. Or just the stress of trying to get it all will kill you, you know? So to me, I mean, we have to learn how to be first so that we can do the things that light us up, that give us a sense of purpose and meaning in life. So I don't honestly think that the lack of alcohol is a good sign. I think people are just doing different things. They're addicted. There's weed now and all the gummies. Like my son actually, somebody said, "Why don't kids your age drink?" And he goes, "Because we're all high."
Okay. Yeah. That probably, yeah. The THC industry certainly is probably
Yeah,
taking a bite out of the
yeah.
alcohol industry. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're not managing your nervous system, it's going to manage you, and you are
Yeah.
going to be relying on some sort of coping mechanism to escape the disconnect and the lack of connection in your life. So I don't think that drinking less is a sign that the world's getting better. I think people are just switching drugs.
Mm.
And I don't even mean they're all drugs. I think people are just engaged in other ways,
Yeah. Very,
coping.
yeah. Yeah, that's beautifully spoken. I love that we end here on almost a spiritual note, right? This
Yeah.
finding purpose, and looking inward to ourselves, and why we do the things we do in this very, very crazy, hectic culture we all live in right now. All right. Well, I think we're going to leave it there. That was a wonderful, wonderful, very enlightening conversation. Colleen, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more, they want to reach out, they want to connect with you, potentially work with you, where do we want to send them?
Two places. The name of my podcast, I'll give you a multiple choice, but I think you'd get it right. It's not about the alcohol. So go, you can find me there. And then my website is emotionalsobrietycoaching.com. And I have a whole suite of products, from free stuff to, little do-it-yourself courses to my signature programs. So emotionalsobrietycoaching.com is the website.
All right, folks, I will put links to obviously to the website, to the podcast, as well as all of Colleen's socials in the show notes. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or of course on our website. Colleen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, spending the time to share with us all of your wisdom and really your passion for this. I love that your mission is not so much to get your core audience to drink less, but to really get in touch with themselves. I really applaud the work you're doing and encourage you to keep up that great work.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are over 50 and you feel frustrated and stuck and you want a clear path, I invite you to book a free clarity call with me. You can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on right now, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/412. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.